requisitions?
So moved.
Yes.
Yes to that too. Anything else?
I do have one item for consideration, not on the consent agenda. I have a resolution approving appointment to the Warren County Board of Developmental Disabilities. And this resolution would be appointing Brody Conover to the board.
So moved.
Yes.
Yes,
And that's all I have.
that's it, okay. All right, so our
Do I
next,
adjourn it?
we do adjourn it then? Is that the right?
So moved.
consensus?
And.
Yes, okay, then we reopen for our work session. And I think that's,
Suzanne Mason.
right, Suzanne Mason's it.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm here today to present to you the applications for the Community Development Block Grant Program and to find out which projects you'd like to fund, assuming that we're going to receive funding this year. We received 12 applications, and would you like me to go through them at this time?
It's fine with me.
Okay, the first four are public service projects, and there's a cap on those projects. So I'm asking if you could choose up to $105,000 worth of projects for the first four. So we have Family Promise of Warren County is requesting $82,000 for, that's the, of course, the homeless shelter in Warren County. Safe on Main is requesting $50,000 for assistance to victims of domestic abuse. Upwards Care is requesting $48,000. This is a company, I believe they're based in California, and they want to train child care providers doing an online program, and they target low income and minorities. I'm not familiar with it. Mrs. Jones, I don't know if you are familiar with it or not.
No, but our child care resource and referral agencies do that sort of work.
Okay.
And so it seems like it would be duplicative.
Okay. And then finally, our Child Advocacy Center, and I believe you're all familiar with them, they're requesting $50,000 for their service to children who have experienced trauma. After we decide how much we want to spend for the public service projects, we can subtract that from the amount, and then we are left with the amount for the construction projects. For the construction projects, the Village of Butlerville is requesting a new fence and some upgrades to a playground that we actually funded through CDBG funding. The City of Franklin is requesting some storm sewer and road repair for I believe it's 6th Street near downtown. The Township of Franklin is requesting road surface project, and I think this is like the second or third year that they've submitted this application. They're still hoping for that funding. Village of Harveysburg is requesting funds for their water tower demolition. Pleasant Plain is asking for funding for their playground to put rubber tiles down, and this is a playground that also you funded with CDBG funding. City of South Lebanon is requesting road paving project for Hobart Street. Harveysburg Community Historical Society has a museum and community center in Harveysburg that they run. They're requesting a large amount of money as match funds for a grant that they've received. They're wanting to put in a new parking lot and to upgrade, or they don't have any running water in that facility currently, and they're wanting to add a restroom to that. So they have a grant from the Ohio Facilities Commission, and they also have received donations for almost $30,000, so they need more funding to finish that project. And then the Village of Morrow is asking for funds for their cemetery entrance restoration project.
And so when do we need to make this decision?
If you want to make decisions today, that's fine, but we do have time. We have, a month.
So I don't understand the Historical Society. Is that a public entity in Harveysburg?
It's the Harveysburg Historical Society.
So it's not a public entity.
It's a nonprofit. I don't know that I would call it public, but it's a nonprofit.
Right, okay. So have we been giving donations to charitable organizations like this?
We have in the past,
And
about
with
maybe,
these kind of funds?
I'm sorry?
With these kind of funds, we do that? That's within our legal right to just give this away to people who are
Well, my
charitable?
question is that we actually do that, the blue section are nonprofits, it's just why that project wouldn't be in the nonprofit bucket. That's why
Yeah.
that was my issue, it's like,
Well, usually when it says construction projects, that's why I think you put it in here, because it's a construction project.
But you're questioning if it should be
But
a
why is it
public
in, yeah, then
service.
that's what Shannon is saying too, with regard to that. That's why I was wondering, because we do construction projects for public entities.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. The last time we did a project for Harveysburg for the same society, we categorized it as a public, as a construction project. But that's a good question,
Well,
something.
yeah,
that we
that's my
can
only
look
question. I
into.
mean, I know that we do the things in the blue category
Mhm.
we're giving it to, but we're doing a construction project for, I thought, public entities, but this is a private entity. We're doing construction for them.
Mhm.
And I just wondered if that's something that we did prior to this, and that's appropriate.
When I was looking through the CDBG manual, and it got to the section about historical societies are eligible, it was not listed as a public project. So based on that research, I would say that it's appropriate to keep it under the yellow construction projects.
so the regulation provides that historical societies are eligible, as long as they meet the other conditions in terms of
That's,
underinvested areas.
yes, that's exactly correct.
Okay, that's helpful to know.
Mhm. And we did provide them some funding, I want to say maybe 6 years ago for that same community center.
When they call it a community center, but that's, again, that's not publicly owned. It's not a public community center.
No, but it's used in Harveysburg as a community center. They are required by this other grant to host 2 public community projects a year.
So what's the total amount that's being requested for construction projects?
I can tell you in just a second. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with this webpage, a little different than what I was expecting it to be. Do you have it, Crystal?
Got, $1,232,675.
And what's,
That's everything.
and that includes the nonprofits above? and
That
the blue
does not,
section?
that's just construction.
Okay. And so what's the total at once you,
What's
what's the,
that?
you add what's the total for the request from the public service projects?
I think it's 182 if you take out the upwards.
I would suggest we study this a little bit. We've got upwards of a month.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that idea too. And again, I don't want to, have we given something to this community center before for Harveysburg?
We did, we installed new windows for them.
And that was last year, or when was it?
No,
No,
that
it
was
was-
like 6 years ago, it was a while back.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions, though, as you consider
No.
this? I did want to make one other comment, if you don't mind. Every year, we assume we're going to receive these funds. We never know for sure. This year especially, we don't know for sure. And I just wanted to say that even though we're unsure, there's some uncertainty, we need to be ready to roll in case we do receive these funds.
When will we know whether we'll receive them or not?
I have no idea. And the HUD doesn't know either.
So what is the deadline we have to act on this?
We
Is there a
have
deadline?
90 days to submit our plan once they tell us our allocation.
Okay, but the allocation's not been given to us yet.
No,
All right, so we have plenty of time.
right, we have time.
And is there a special process by which people apply for this?
Right, we send out an application, and we put it in the newspaper as well, and they applied through with the application.
And when we send out an application, do we send it to specific people?
I do, I send it to every single village and township and city, as well as the public service people who have traditionally applied.
Okay, so we don't send it to all public service people, we send it to just specific ones that have applied in the past.
Yes.
And how did we get them on our list, the people that have applied in the past? Is it because we knew somebody? How did they get on that list? I
Anybody
guess?
who's applied in the past, I send it out to them as a courtesy.
Okay.
If anybody wants information or an application, they're welcome to reach out to our office, and it is put in the newspaper.
And when we put in the newspaper, do we give the criteria by which they are eligible?
We explain that it's for low-income areas and it has to benefit those people.
Okay,
And
thank you.
sometimes people do have questions about how that works, especially it's tricky with the census block information. So I always let them know that I'm happy to help them. Our office is there for them.
But if you're an elected official or an administrator for a community that qualifies for this program, you know it, right?
They know it when I tell them because I send them an email.
Yeah, but I mean, in general, you know.
Oh, I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, but it's part of your job, right?
Right.
Is, you know, seeing grants and things like that. So, I mean, that's really, it's not incumbent on us to say, please go apply for this. It's on them to know the grant programs that they're eligible for,
That's correct.
right? I mean,
Yes.
We're not under a fiduciary responsibility to inform people, come and do this. We do that as a courtesy, right?
Yes, we do that as a courtesy. And these villages and townships, they have agreed to be a part of this program.
Yeah, but this has been around for a very long time, and I would venture to say every community that's qualified in the county, from every city to every village to every township, has gotten something.
Yes.
What's the total cost if you add everything together again?
For everything,
Yep,
it's
mhm.
$1,462,875.
Okay, thank you.
And we're estimating that we'll receive 800,000.
Good, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any
Thanks,
other
Suzanne.
participants? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Seeing none, are there any other
Martin
matters?
has something.
Yeah, I've got something. So we received, Bruce and I received, a few weeks back, from Chris Broush, some folks in the greater Cincinnati Waterworks area that are interested in receiving water service on Cocksmith Road. There's 4 properties. So Bruce, Chris, and I were going back and forth with some emails. Bruce asked that I reach out to the city manager of Mason to see the annexation agreement, the pre-annexation agreement, that they have all residents sign. I received that, shot that over to Bruce. I think Bruce has some questions relative to that, and I'll turn it over to Bruce, and we kind of want to get your direction on how you'd like to proceed, because in order to do this, we have to make an amendment to our arrangement with Cincinnati Waterworks, which if we do this, will be the 8th amendment. This has been done before, so Bruce, I'll turn it over to you.
The big picture item plays into the smaller picture item. We want to discuss with you today, find out what the board's pleasure is, and the pleasure may be just to continue as we've done in the past, but the water service agreement with Greater Cincinnati will expire at the end of this year. There was some mention that Chris was working with GCWW to negotiate a new agreement, and we discussed that last year. The big picture item, as I want to refer to it, is that in that document, as Commissioner Young raised when we discussed it last time, he had some angst about this mandatory annexation to the city of Mason. When Greater Cincinnati Waterworks becomes the water provider for anyone that gets water service that comes through Mason's infrastructure. And that's a contractual arrangement between Mason and Cincinnati. We're not involved in that. When we get involved is when Water and Sewer gets a request from Greater Cincinnati Waterworks to amend our territory and release from Warren County's water territory properties to Greater Cincinnati, there's always that rub that Greater Cincinnati has to get these people to sign a pre-annexation agreement with the city of Mason because of their contractual relationship. Last month, you were asked to approve and did approve the 7th Amendment to the water service contract between Greater Cincinnati and this county to release one property at that time. And you've done several, 4, 5, and 6 within the last couple of years, those amendments. And there would be 3 or 4 property owners at the most that wanted water from Greater Cincinnati Water Works. This time, we, as Martin mentioned, the 8th Amendment has been presented to the Water Department to bring to you to ask that you release 4 more properties. There's 3 property owners. There's a total of 4 parcels of property to release it from Warren County's water territory so that Greater Cincinnati can serve it. My concern that I raised, and I just wanted to discuss it with you today to see if you want to do anything at all, is because Commissioner Young raised this issue about this mandatory annexation. Are these residents being informed as to what their obligations are if they do enter into and get water from Greater Cincinnati Water Works? Because they're required to annex to the city of Mason. So I asked Martin to reach out to Eric Hansen. He did. Eric provided a copy of the annexation agreement. That annexation agreement requires that the property owner be solely responsible for all costs of legal and engineering for purposes of annexing to the city of Mason. It requires them obviously to pay their tap-in fees. It requires them obviously to run their own private laterals, a contractor cost. And until the annexation is required, they have to pay 150% of the user rate to the city of Mason for that water, or I'm sorry, Greater Cincinnati Water Works. But that annexation agreement is with the city of Mason. The other concern I have is because the annexation agreement says nothing, do these people understand they're also going to be required to pay Mason's 1.12% payroll tax? That agreement says absolutely nothing about it. We know nothing about what your constituents, these residents, are being told, if anything, other than here's a 1-page annexation agreement, and the things other than the payroll tax are stated in that document. The people out there have wells or cisterns. Most of them that you have had come before you had wells, but out in that area, it's my understanding that the wells don't pump well. And furthermore, there are times in the summer months that those wells dry up. So I understand that these people want public water. And if they want public water knowingly, taking on all these costs that they will incur and paying payroll tax, that's great. But you never hear from these residents. All we get is a request from Greater Cincinnati Water Works that comes to the water department, and the water department comes over here and asks you to release territory to Greater Cincinnati so that they can be the water provider. So my thought was, and again, it's totally up to you, when we get these requests, at a minimum that we send an invitation when that item's going to be on the agenda, not the consent agenda like it has been in the past. Have it on the agenda, send an invitation to those residents and invite them to come. If they don't show up, that's fine, that speaks volumes. If they do show up, ask them what you've been told, and if they know all these costs are on their back, then, and they still want public water, then so be it. You know, that's an easy decision for you to make. But unless they know all those things that they're going to occur, and here's the real rub to it. There is no timeline for Mason to require the annexation. And in response to Martin's email, Eric said, there's no timeline. Sometimes we've had them go 10 years or more, so they were paying this 150% rate to GCWW for user rates. But those properties, I would submit, are probably properties, and Eric's email mentions this, that are not at that time contiguous by 5% to the corporate limits of the city of Mason. The properties in the Eighth Amendment, I looked those up this morning, all of those are contiguous to the city of Mason. So one of them abuts Trailside Acres, one of them abuts
Here's a map if you wanna see
the
it.
reserves at Carmel, and one of them is actually across the street on the east side of Cocksmith Road, but directly across from it is a property that's already in the corporate limits of Mason. So there would be that 5% contiguity for an annexation. So there's no hurdle to Mason going ahead and saying, well, it's time for you to annex, which is the concern. And again, this is nothing more than hearing from your constituents that they are knowingly doing this, and if so, that's easy. But I'm going to be surprised if they know all of this.
So what township are they in, right?
Union Township.
And does Union Township get informed of this too?
No.
I mean, because we're actually taking property out of their township, which we usually care about.
They would get notice, obviously, when the annexation is filed, because they're required by state law.
But they don't have any say in it at that point.
That they don't under current law, that'd be correct, yes.
All right, and, so, help me understand this. These people all look like they're just on a lot that's a single residence, and it's never gonna be anything different than that. It's
All
never
those
gonna
are 5 acres, large estate lots, and some of them are much larger than that,
be- Oh, is that right?
yes.
So they could actually be developed with more than just one home?
No, because all of the lots on Cocksmith Road that were developed have a restriction against them that prohibit them from being further subdivided.
When I look at this map, I don't understand this one outlying property. It looks much smaller, and it looks like it's, I don't understand, how is that property? You see what I'm talking about? How is that property?
You have to hand it down to me. I
Okay.
can't see it.
But, so, Mason used to have a well for water. And when I first ran for city council in 2001, it was very hard water, it was difficult, they had limitations that they were worried about, and I advocated they going on Cincinnati Water. And in October of 2001, before I got elected to council, they actually did this. They went on to Cincinnati Water and entered into an agreement with Cincinnati Waterworks. But do we use Cincinnati Waterworks for other parts of in our territory already?
Yes.
So now, that's what I thought. So the reason why this is involving Mason is because the infrastructure that Cincinnati Waterworks is responsible for is gonna be used to service these individuals. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And so Mason is requiring what? As a matter of some ordinance they've got, that they're not gonna permit their water provider with permission to go outside of their territory when they're using the infrastructure for which Cincinnati Waterworks is contracted to Mason for, and that's why there's the rub here. Is that it?
That's it. The only exception I make to what you said was it's not just by ordinance, it's pursuant to a contract.
Okay. Well, I know there's an ordinance in Mason that talks about they're not gonna provide water and sewer and stuff unless the council permits that. But it's really Cincinnati Waterworks system that's being used. I don't remember now how exactly this, because obviously there's water pipes all over Mason, and Cincinnati Waterworks comes in and starts using existing pipes and stuff like that. But in this case, the pipes that they're gonna be using run through Mason and then into these people's homes. And would they be putting in new water lines? Is that what's gonna be happening? to go outside of Mason? Because Mason doesn't have water lines outside of Mason.
Yeah, Chris would have to produce a map to show where existing water lines are, but yeah, they come through Mason. And each time you've had one of these amendments on Coxsmith Road, GCWW proffered to us that they have to have Mason's consent. And in this case, as part of the documents they produced to the water department, they produced signed pre-annexation agreements by these property owners. The city has not signed them yet, but the property owners have signed them.
All right, well, I understand, I suppose, why Mason would want to have people annex in if they are the ones providing the service. But when it's Cincinnati Waterworks that's providing the service, I don't know, but then, and then the rates that get paid for this, I don't remember this, Mason doesn't get paid for this service, because it's being provided by Cincinnati Waterworks. It's just Cincinnati Waterworks that's being paid for the service.
That's correct, and the 150% rate is in the annexation agreement, but nevertheless, whoever's getting it, I assume it's GCWW.
Me
It's
too.
their rate structure. Your constituent is paying 150% until the annexation occurs. When the annexation occurs, then obviously Mason, they're in Mason, so they're gonna pay the same rate as the other users in Mason pay.
Well, I am completely in agreement with your proposal. I mean, these people should make a knowledgeable choice. They should know all the facts. They should understand all the facts. Obviously, it appears to me they're the ones that are initiating this because they have a problem with their well or whatever, and therefore they're looking for what's the closest, easiest available water service provider, and they are the ones initiating it. So I don't want to deny them that right, but I agree with you, since we have to participate, and since it involves an annexation where we would be involved, I agree with you that they should be fully informed, and we should invite them in to make sure that being the case.
What, tell me about the 5% continuity contiguous, that essentially under the law, and what we've had a long practice, are these donut holes of a city that exists in the middle of a township. That, okay, everything around it is township, and now there's one parcel that's a city. That just, from fire protection, police, it just makes no sense for that to happen. And I thought that's why under the law, there was, if you want to annex into a city, you had to have some sort of a boundary that was adjacent to it. Is that not the
That
case?
is, there's a contiguity requirement.
Yeah, under the law that changed in 2001, went into effect in 2002, that's when we got all that expedited annexation stuff. The requirement became there had to be at least 5% contiguity to the corporate limits. So you just measure the
So you're saying all those properties, that's all Mason around each one, each one of those parcels touches Mason?
Yeah, they did, yeah. This small parcel is I'd have to check this, Commissioner Grossman, but I think this drawing is wrong. The small parcel does not have a street address because it's just a basic vacant parcel. It's owned by Mr. and Mrs. Pancheri, who are asking for service to their adjacent property parcel. And these are owner-occupied parcels, by the way. So it's just a vacant lot that's just attached to their parcels, what that parcel is. I don't know why it's way down here. That this map, I think, is maybe inaccurate.
So when we release them, if we were to release those properties from our service territory, do they go into another service territory, or is it just Cincinnati Water? Is that considered Cincinnati Waterworks service territory, or is it some political subdivision boundaries service territory?
What the service territory really is a designation of who may provide the service.
Mhm.
So by warrant, this board releasing it, you're releasing it for GCWW to be the service provider is what you're doing. And even though it's in our service area, we don't have water in that vicinity. That's why all these amendments are being requested.
And so the 150%, it's 150% of what
The user rate, whatever user rate
is in our service territory?
No, in
in their service
Waterworks.
territory.
Waterworks' base fee is 150% higher. Greater Cincinnati Waterworks.
Yeah, I mean, I know that their fee is higher. What I'm trying to understand is if, I mean, those Mason customers, those or I guess Union Township customers who receive, we provide water service to some of those customers in that area through Greater Cincinnati Waterworks, which is much higher rates than in other parts of our service territory. But they receive the benefit of socialized rate making, so their rate is still low, even though the costs to serve those customers are much higher. So what I'm trying to understand is that, you know, since the rest of our ratepayers won't be subsidizing it, is that the justification for the increase? Or is it merely an increase over what their standard rate is, and it's a money grab for them?
The latter. So Commissioner Grossman and I pay a rate to GCWW. We get a bill every month, we pay that because we live in the city of Mason's corporate limits. This is in the annexation agreement, and it expressly states that until the annexation is perfected, then they have to pay 150% user rate compared to what Commissioner Grossman and I pay. Okay.
Well, I think that.
But is it because other ratepayers are socializing the cost of it, is what I'm trying to understand?
We'd have to ask Mason that, what their
I'm
justification
sure
is.
it's just you, because again, it goes to who put in the water lines. Was it City of Mason, or was it?
They were non-participants in that.
Correct, and typically you had participation fees if, you know, governmental body comes, puts a pipe in front of your house, do you want to tie into it? Yes, I pay a fee. These 4 people, if they theoretically 20 years ago said, no, I don't want to pay a fee, then yeah, sure, then you
Yeah.
have to pay the fee, you got to be like everybody else. But who put in, who paid for the cost of the construction of the pipes inside of there? Was this, you know, at the cost of the city? And if it was, okay, this is a way over time of getting their costs
Capital
back
costs.
and reduced, that, hey, you gotta be in the city, we paid for all this stuff. But if it was Waterworks put in all of these lines, there was no outlay from the city, and these are township residents that, hey, there's a water line in front of us, none of my neighbors had to pay this fee, a participation fee, and again, I don't know that, then that is kind of a power grab, and it would be interesting, who keeps the extra 50%? Is that Waterworks, or does that, some sort of, per their contract, go back to the city, because in lieu of them collecting
That's
income taxes, I'm gonna get something from GCWW that they're gonna pay me in lieu of them paying taxes to me.
And the incentive then is for them to not annex because they can continue to collect. I'm not suggesting that's what is happening, but that's what's going through my mind, is trying to, you know, on one hand, there may be justification for
Well,
an increased rate.
these people they can initiate the annexation. They can
Yes.
say, let's go.
Yeah,
They're required to, by this annexation, one page, we call it pre-annexation, it's titled
Yeah,
annexation.
but you were mentioning a timing issue, and that doesn't have to happen, but I think to Shannon's point, these individuals who are being charged the increased rate, when they're getting service but they're not yet annexed,
Yeah.
they can actually speed that process
that's
up.
right.
If they're 5% contiguous, yes. And
Well,
these
I
are,
see, yeah.
on the 8th Amendment, they are. The
Right.
7th Amendment, you just did last month, Ms. Davis, she did back up to the corporate limits, her rear property line was contiguous.
Okay.
I mean, but the bottom line is, there are customers, but yet we can't service them.
Right.
Correct.
Right, and that's why they wanna do this.
That's right.
Well, they wanna do it because their wells are just not producing.
Well, yeah, okay, but it's both those reasons. One, that we can't provide them a service that's comparable to, because their wells are not
Right.
operating any longer, and they don't have a choice.
But what you propose, I think, makes absolute sense, that to give them the opportunity to, you know, make their case so that we can question them to make sure that they understand that, you know, what's related to this transaction, I think makes perfect sense.
That's all I'm suggesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
If they don't show up, they got an invitation, they don't show up.
that's right.
Fine.
and if I'm them and I show up, the first question's gonna be, oh, I'm in your service territory? Why don't you have a water line in front of my
Yeah.
house?
Yeah.
I wanna stay in the township and I want water from you.
Great.
So where is it?
Yeah, and Mason only allows type one annexations.
Yeah.
So it's not one of those where they stay in the township, yet they're annexed. They have to change the boundaries and they become, and all the revenue goes to the city of Mason.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Anything else? Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.